Hi, everybody. All right, so I thought that I would record my presentation just because I find it actually quite difficult to do. So it's always good practice, and so I chose to do an asynchronous recording. So anyway, so my module of learning was actually for only 1 week within a broader 4-credit course called Theories of Communication, and that course sits in the Multimedia Communication Certificate program here at Yukon College. So this particular module is around radio. And I'll just here quickly read the outcomes for the module. So by the end of the week, I usually write on the module, students will be able to discuss the continued importance of radio in the broader media landscape, examine and critically reflect upon the role of a national publicly funded broadcaster, and describe the role of the Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission and regulations around Canadian content in fostering Canadian culture and identity. So in the module, I lay out the outcomes, and then I basically provide generally 3 different ways for students then to engage with the content. So I try to have video, I have tried to have some text and articles, and then something for them to listen to. For this particular module then, I have a short video lecture that I do every week. And then I went out and videotaped some guest speakers, some local guest speakers from 2 of the radio stations. So one was CBC and one is our local private radio station, CKRW. For the reading, I'm using an open ed textbook, so I have a chapter out of that. And then I would find various articles, journal articles, or sort of news media articles to kind of add to the discussion. I also have a podcast for this module, and that's around Canadian content. So I introduce them to the concepts of podcasting and give them an opportunity to actually listen to one. So for the learning activities then, it's every week in this course I try to basically do a discussion forum and a check your understanding quiz. It's a bit tricky to know what is a learning activity and what is an assessment. They are actually both marked in my course each week. They're both worth 3%. But they are kind of learning activities, especially the discussion forum, in and of themselves. So I do a discussion forum that some weeks is done in a group context, other weeks it's not. And then I have this check your understanding quiz, which is mostly based, it's fully based on the videos, the readings, and the podcast. And this is my way of ensuring that the students do kind of interact with the content, because I find that if it's not worth marks or assessed, my students in the past haven't really been interacting with that content. Okay, so moving on, in terms of then the activity prototype, I looked specifically at the discussion forum. So within the discussion forum, I kind of start off the forum with a bit of a hook, something to grab the reader's interest. Then I ask them to think about a question. So in this case, should public dollars be used to support the CBC? Or public broadcasting in general. I'm trying to make it a bit broader because my students, many of them are not originally from Canada. So again, then I ask them to watch, read, and listen to something. Might be a podcast, a video guest speaker. A lot of that actually is back in the module as a whole. Then I ask them to dig deeper and do a little bit of research on their own. And then it's the actual discussion. I ask that question around, what do you think? Do should public dollars be used to support a public broadcaster. So again, they can do this individually. Some weeks I put them into smaller groups, depending on the size of my class. I find that sometimes putting them into groups of, 5 or 6 is easier for the students to actually have discussion. So just some thoughts then around what I have tried to create here. So what might you and my fellow students find interesting or useful or meaningful about this module? So I focus on the watch, read, listen, because I think from a universal design for learning perspective that we need to offer students a variety of ways to engage with content. It can't just be, reading. And so I make a very special effort to offer other ways, video and audio, to engage with the concepts that I'm trying to get across. Every week I do a short video lecture of about 8 to 10 minutes. And I find it hard to believe, but my students say that they actually really like the video lectures that I do. I don't like doing them, but the students find it useful, and I think it's a way that they can feel connected to me, their instructor. And then I want students obviously to interact with each other, and so the discussion forum is that opportunity for them to interact with each other and get into some conversations. Next question, what perspectives, ideas, beliefs, or strategies have I used? So I raised this before that I used an outcomes-based approach, but I really thought a lot about the outcomes and how accessible and relatable they are to my students. So they are focused on Canada and issues in Canada, Canadian content and CBC, public broadcaster. But, how do I broaden those outcomes that students from whatever context they come from can relate to those outcomes and draw on their own personal experiences and prior knowledge to kind of work through the lesson. So I did give some thought to that, and that was very useful for me. And then lastly, how your design will support learning and learners. So I do this balance in my mind between consistency and variety. So in my course, which has 14 weeks or modules, I've tried to be very, very consistent in terms of how I lay out each week. So the students kind of learn what's expected, there's no surprises, and there's a familiarity with that. Within that, though, I feel like variety is really, really, really important. So for example, within the discussion forum, I try to mix it up, because if they did 14 weeks of kind of read an article and comment on it, and then post three posts to your fellow students, I think that would get a bit boring for my students. So within the discussion forum framework, I try to add variety. I put them into groups. One week, I ask them to do video responses. Another week, I create little debates. Some weeks, so that's where I kind of add the creativity and the variety that I hope keep the students engaged from week to week. All right, so that's my little presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I have really enjoyed engaging with everyone in this FLO course.